Hi guys, it's ASBYT and today we're comparing the latest budget iPhone with the latest budget OnePlus phone. The iPhone SE versus the OnePlus 8. The king of flagship killers up against quite possibly the greatest flagship killer of 2020. The iPhone SE costs £400 and the OnePlus 8 costs £600. So you might be thinking, why are you comparing the two? But to be fair, we've often compared flagship OnePlus phones with flagship iPhones and they usually cost £300, £400, £500 more than OnePlus phones. So it's time to flip reverse. It's crazy to think we now live in a world where a OnePlus phone costs more than an iPhone, but that's where we are and let's see if that price is justified. Before we begin, if this video gets 20,000 likes, a massive task, never gonna get there, I'm gonna be giving this iPhone SE away, so you know what to do. Firstly, what is the unboxing experience like on both? Well, if we lift the lids, you're greeted with the phones and manuals in reverse ordering, and underneath we have the charger and charging cables in both boxes, but we also have a case in the OnePlus 8 and a pair of wired earphones on the iPhone SE. Fast charging is available on both, although on the iPhone you will have to buy a separate fast charger because the one in the box is just the slow 5-watt charger. The OnePlus 8, however, has a 30-watt warp charger in the box and it will give you fast charging to power your device to 50% in just over 20 minutes, which is brilliant. One benefit, however, of the new iPhone SE is wireless charging, which we don't have on the OnePlus 8. Now, in terms of battery life and what I've experienced over the last couple of days with the iPhone and for a couple of weeks with the OnePlus 8 is rather interesting when we look at the actual battery capacity. The size of the battery cells on paper is actually a little bit misleading because we have a 4,300 mAh battery capacity with the OnePlus 8 and only a 1,821 mAh cell on the iPhone SE. So you would think the iPhone would get absolutely crushed, but in reality, even though the OnePlus 8 does win about 6 hours of screen on time, it's closer than you would think, about 4.5 to 5 hours with the iPhone SE. Now, a lot of that is down to software and the A13 chip, more on internals and performance later, but also because it only has to power the smaller 4.7-inch HD LCD display compared to the much larger 6.55-inch AMOLED Full HD display. But the OnePlus 8 does win in the battery department and also in the display round as well, but this time it's not even close. The only possible way you would want the iPhone in this area is if curved displays are simply a no-go for you. Or of course you wanted a physical home button with a fingerprint scanner, as opposed to the in-display scanner on the OnePlus 8. With its near 90% screen-to-body ratio, HDR10 support, JNCD rating of 0.4, and that 90Hz refresh rate, the OnePlus 8 has an incredible display for the money. Media consumption and gaming is just streets ahead on the OnePlus 8, also aided by that Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chip, which is just about as good as it gets on the Android side. It will crush pretty much anything you throw at it, but remarkably still loses out in some areas to the A13 Bionic in a £400 iPhone SE. And that is of course one of the huge selling points about the iPhone SE. It has the same chipset as a 1000 plus iPhone 11 Pro. But overall, in terms of raw performance, there's very little in it, as also the 12GB of RAM in my OnePlus 8 does handle multitasking slightly better than the 3GB of RAM in the iPhone SE. It's not crazy better as the numbers would suggest, because 12GB is probably overkill in a smartphone, and largely down to the iOS operating system and app support, but occasionally certain apps on the iPhone will reload from scratch when going back into them from others, something I simply don't experience on the OnePlus 8. One-handed use is of course easier on the SE due to its size, but for me, moving back to the home button after using gestures for a long time is quite jarring. Both phones are incredibly fast, smooth and powerful, and for me, as far as software goes, it really is the best from Apple versus the best from Android, as in my opinion from a software point of view, OnePlus's Oxygen OS is the best implementation of Android, period. Taking everything that's great about Google's stock Android and just adding a few tweaks, a few little flares here and there, making it just incredibly refined. Generally, most people will prefer either iOS or Android due to the fact that that's really all they've ever known. Both are great, but I would implore you to try both, because you never know until you try. Now, camera is another area where the iPhone SE will turn heads, as it again uses the same primary 12MP lens as on the iPhone 11 series. And side by side with a primary 48MP lens on the OnePlus 8, the iPhone definitely holds its own and often wins on things like dynamic range and color temperature, creating photos that really pop. Unfortunately, however, for photography, that's where its superiority ends. If you want to use that 48MP mode on the OnePlus 8, you can get greater detail, and because the iPhone SE only has one lens, you don't get wide angle or telephoto options like you do on the OnePlus. This gives you 2 times optical zoom and 10 times digital zoom compared to the iPhone SE's 5 times digital zoom only. So again, the quality of detail in the zoom shots is better on the OnePlus 8, especially in that optical zoom range. The portrait mode is also limited on the iPhone SE, as unless the subject of the photo is a human face, it will not give you that nice depth of field or blur background look. Of course, if the subject is a human, which a lot of people will use portrait mode for, then you do get great shots on both, and it will probably come down to personal preference whether you prefer the sort of warmer tones that you get on the iPhone or the cooler, potentially less saturated colours on the OnePlus 8. Let me know in the comments what you think. So the rear camera on the OnePlus 8 overall wins for photography simply due to the options and flexibility you get, but that one iPhone SE lens is still incredible for a £400 phone. Here are some samples from the front cameras: 7 megapixel lens on the iPhone and a 16 megapixel on the OnePlus 8. And the iPhone, as expected, again has warmer color temperatures, and the edge detection, like pretty much all iPhones, is pretty poor at times. The OnePlus 8 photos also seem to look a little bit sharper to me, possibly due to software processing, but also that larger sensor size, but let me know what you think. In low light, the OnePlus 8 simply wins again, and this is because it does have its own dedicated night mode called Nightscape. It allows for slow shutter speed or longer exposure, taking in more light, showing far more details in the shadows. Now these shots are all basically pretty much pitch black, so the iPhone SE isn't terrible, it is just amazing how much the OnePlus 8 can pick out in comparison. Neither front cameras have dedicated night modes, but again, the OnePlus 8 wins again here. Video, however, is a whole different ballgame, as the SE again borrows features from its more expensive iPhone brothers, or sisters, or a gender-neutral model. Simply brilliant stabilisation and image quality are just ahead of the OnePlus 8. Yes, the 8 does have some new features like 4K Cine, where the aspect ratio changes to 21:9 for that industry standard cinema widescreen look. It also has the same max 4K 60 recording as the SE, but overall Apple have just killed the game at the moment as far as video goes. Front camera video recording is okay on both, but only a max of 1080p, so no 4K if that is important to you. If you're watching that video content back and are going to want to know what the speakers sound like, here is a quick test for you. Both have stereo speakers, but which sound better for you? Now the iPhone SE is IP67 rated, giving you 30 minutes in water at a depth of 1 meter, whereas the OnePlus 8 is only water resistant. Now in testing previous OnePlus devices with this tag, the devices have been fine when I've dropped them into water briefly, and will be fine in the rain, etc. But it is just nice to have that kind of guarantee, peace of mind that you get with the IP rating. So for me, there's no denying the OnePlus 8 looks and feels more modern and premium in the hand. It offers more overall in a device with a brilliant display, decent battery life, smooth and easy to use software, and a versatile camera. But like the iPhone SE or not, it's a hugely clever move from Apple. I think they created the new SE refresh to not only take sales away from all Android phones in this price bracket, but also to directly compete with Google and the soon to launch Pixel 4a, because I'm sure Apple would have seen how much the Pixel 3a cleaned up last year. And sometimes you've got to remember in tech, manufacturers don't angle these devices at tech enthusiasts like you and me, but for the average general consumer, like pretty much most of my friends and family who I speak to. They're often not massively bothered about spec numbers, cutting edge design to some extent, and they just want reliability, speed of performance, and a good camera. And that's exactly what the iPhone SE delivers. It's a smart move. And remember, the iPhone SE costs £200 less than the OnePlus 8. So if you can afford the OnePlus 8, great, go get it. It's a better phone in my opinion. But at this £400 price point, I'm pretty sure it's going to sell like glue roll in a pandemic. Too soon? The iPhone SE might just be the flagship killer of 2020, but let me know what you think. Out of the two, which would you go for? And do you think the £600 price tag is justified for that kind of extra features that you get? Like and share if you did enjoy this video. Remember, 20,000 likes. A massive task, never going to get there. I will be giving the iPhone SE away. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and love everything tech, breaking tech news, unboxings, reviews. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. ASBYT, peace out.